I think the answer to this question is, for most people at least, to focus on your self image and really devote everything you have towards that. And I'm going to try and explain this a little further with a story of mine. And to set some context for this story, this takes place about a few years ago, so 17, 18 years old. And I was nearing the end of high school. So if you live somewhere other than where I'm from, just think of end of high school. And at this time, I really wanted a girlfriend or a relationship because this is something that I had never really had before this point. And where I'm from, at least, a lot of people around you, your classmates, friends, had these sort of things going on. And I said, you know what, that would be pretty cool. And I kind of want that too. So I didn't really do much about it. And there was a situation where I ended up meeting one of my classmates, and she was pretty nice. We got along, and I ended up wanting a relationship with her. And she made it clear very quickly that she did not want a relationship. And this should have been my first sign to really back off and just kind of leave it at that. But I didn't. I was very naive, like a lot of other people would have been at that age. So I remained friends with her, and we just kind of hung out, kept it simple. But I always had that thought in the back of my head, and it never worked out. I wasn't gonna change her mind no matter what I did. But I kind of deluded myself into thinking that one day maybe she'll change her mind. And this act of clinging on to something that was never there really kind of set the tone for caring way too much about these things, or I guess her specifically, um, when it wasn't really being reciprocated back, or at least the level that I cared. And when I look back at the situation a few years later, where I am now, it's very interesting because if I look at the other aspects of my life at that time, I was I was pretty much a loser. I was very addicted to video games. My social life was barely present, if anything. Um, and I didn't work out. I didn't go to the gym, which I think is very important. And I think that these things kind of snowballed into having a very poor self image because when I understood that she didn't want anything, or at least didn't want a relationship like I did, I started to think very negatively about myself. I said, wow, like, I guess I'm not worthy of this stuff. And I went down a really, stupid rabbit hole of just completely deteriorating my mental health. And I would end up joining forums and talk to people online to, further credit this, I guess, nihilistic belief that I had been developing. And I think that was also a big mistake, is that I looked for validation online about this theory that I had that I was just unworthy of these things at that age. And so anyway, I say this to make the point that if I were to go back in time and tell younger me, anything, a few things to try and help his situation, the number one thing I would stress to him is that I needed to have, I guess, an ego about my self image. I needed to really focus on myself and turn myself into somebody that I'm proud of before I end up, searching for a relationship with someone else. And I was definitely not proud of who I was. Oh no, I was definitely not proud of who I was at that time. And I was just doing everything backwards. I was looking for a relationship with someone else before I had even, you know, made myself satisfied with my current progress in the gym and school and everything combined. And it's funny because looking back at some photos during that time, you could see that as I started deteriorating my mental health, my face was getting bloated and I was just not looking my best at all. My interior thoughts affected my exterior looks. I had acne and I was just not, I was greasy. It was not a good time at all in my life. And I'm really glad to have fixed it. But That's what it was. And I would tell him, hey, listen, you need to figure out yourself first. You need to go to the gym. And I think I want to talk more about going to the gym and all that in another video, but I would really stress going to the gym. I would stress focusing on your grades, your friends, hang out with your friends, have good social time. That's just something that I neglected. And, you know, looking back, it seems so obvious. Like, oh, just do the hang out with your friends, eat good food, whatever. But I guess I was just in a really bad spot and I couldn't think clearly. My head was clearly clouded. And oh no. And I'm sure, other people are in that situation as well. And they just don't know. They feel stuck because I know I felt stuck. And it's interesting because I was putting a cage around myself. Like nothing was really stopping me from going to the gym. Nothing was stopping me from eating healthy or I guess stepping away from this girl who I knew didn't feel the same as me. But I felt stuck. I felt trapped. I thought, oh no, I need a relationship and this is how I'm gonna get it. And I did silly things. Like I convinced myself that there wasn't gonna be anyone else after her and that it has to be her. And it was really really stupid things that I'm glad I grew out of. But it's important to remember these basic things that you should be doing. And I think other people who happen to be in the same situation should just be drilled advice that is very simple. And I don't think you should overcomplicate it at all because looking back, it is a silly problem. I guarantee that most people who may be going through this will look back in a few years and just think that was a little blown out of proportion. But yeah, that's all I wanted to talk about today. Very simple little story of mine without going into too much detail. But yeah, anyway, take care.